All right, welcome back to the Bits of Good Bootcamp. Next, we're going to talk about how React renders elements onto our screen. So the first thing I want to go over is what exactly a React element is. We've been talking about this for a while, and I haven't really defined the term. And what a React element is it's something that describes what you're actually going to see on the screen. And then it's important to realize that browser DOM elements, so for example, like an H1 would be a browser DOM element, they're relatively expensive to create and actually put on the DOM. But React elements, on the other hand, are actually just plain old JavaScript objects, and JavaScript objects are really cheap to create and store. And then what React DOM does is it handles updating our browser's DOM to match the React elements that it is given. So that's kind of the basics of how it works, and we can get into it a little bit more here now. The first thing every single React application is going to have is inside of an HTML file, it's going to have something that we call the root DOM node. Typically, we identify that by just a div with an actual ID of root, but in theory, this could be anything. But it's just, the whole point is the root DOM node is going to be the DOM node that all of our React stuff gets stuffed inside. And typically, React applications just have one root node. And like I said, this is a very typical example of what that would look like. And then what we do is we use React DOM.render, and React DOM is just an npm package. And what the render function does is it takes the first argument, which is always a React element, and it's going to stuff it inside whatever the second thing is. And here, the second thing, we're using just the native browser API to get the element, the DOM element that has ID root, aka we're getting this. And so what React DOM render is doing is it's taking the first argument and it's stuffing it inside the second argument, which practically in this example means it's taking this hello world and it's putting it inside that div. So updating rendering elements. At this point in time, let's use our knowledge that we have to figure out how we would update something on our DOM. And before we can do that, you need to know that React elements are immutable. What that means is that after you create a React element, you cannot change it. It's immutable. An analogy from the React documentation is that a React element is like a single frame in a movie. An element represents the UI at a certain point in time. But once you create it, you can't go back. It's representing the UI at a certain point in time. And so if we were to use our naive knowledge so far, this might be a somewhat intuitive way to update the DOM. And so let's see what we have going on here. We have a function called tick, and what that function is doing is it's creating a React element that is it's showing us what the local time is, and then it's taking this element and it's going to stuff it inside our root DOM node. And then we're using a JavaScript function setInterval to actually execute that code every second, essentially. So it will re-render something on the DOM every second to update what the code looks like. And let's actually check that out. Let's see a working example here in CodePen, just to see if make sure that it works. And we see that, in fact, again, same code here, but it's showing us the current time. Every single second, it's updating and showing us the time. So that's exactly what we expected. But this should seem kind of janky to you because we're literally calling the render function every second in order to get that to happen, and that just doesn't seem right. It shouldn't sit well in your stomach. Because really what React does is it only updates what's necessary. And what this means is that React, actually regardless of how we're doing it, like whether we're doing it in this intuitive way but kind of hacky or in the proper way, which we'll learn later, React is only updating the part of the DOM that changes every single time we call the render function. And so here, what you can see, this is actually a GIF that shows you that when that code that we just saw, when this code gets executed, instead of re-rendering this whole block every single time, it's only changing the actual time. And the reason is because, well, this part of the H1 tag is never changing. Even this part of the H1 tag is never changing. The only thing that's changing is here. And so because of that, it only updates that part of the DOM node in the DOM tree to avoid unnecessary updates and unnecessary work. And this is practically the reason why React is so fast, because it can be so intelligent about what it's updating. Alright, that's it for this video.